Gotta Love Connecticut Hockey sat down with Tommy Cross, a Simsbury native who emerged as a leader at Boston College and with the AHL Providence Bruins. After playing in his first NHL Stanley Cup playoff game this spring, Cross sat down with us to talk about his hockey career. How did you get your start playing hockey?
Hockey was kind of in my family. My dad grew up playing, my uncles grew up playing, and they all went on to play college hockey too. And I think my dad wanted to stay in hockey once he was done playing, so he just would flood the backyard. So we had a nice rink in our backyard starting when I was 3 years old, and that's kind of how I hopped on the ice.
What other sports did you play growing up?
In middle school and high school, cross country in the fall. I always played golf, but never competitively. But hockey and baseball were my two favorites.
What made you decide to really focus your time and attention really to hockey?
It was a constant struggle, and I think I held on to both sports longer than some people do, and I'm so happy that I did. For a long time, I wanted to play college baseball, and that was kind of, if you ask me my long-term goal, that was it. It wasn't necessarily to play pro hockey. I would say my junior year of high school was when I started to put a little extra time into hockey with the off-ice training, and that's when I maybe favored hockey a little bit more than baseball.
So take me through your experience with the Simsbury youth hockey program. What was that like?
I was in mites for 5 years, all the way up through bantams and midgets. The biggest thing with Simsbury youth hockey for me was just the friendships, because I'm still friends with a lot of the guys that I played squirts and pee-wees with.
So you played for Simsbury High School's hockey team as well, but then you decided to make the transition to prep school hockey. Why did you make that decision?
So I went to Simsbury for 2 years, and then, like you said, moved to Westminster for 2 years. Academically, I was ready for a change. I had found a level of comfort at Simsbury High School, and I loved it there. But I think as a student, I needed a change, and I needed smaller classes. It worked out great because my 2 years at Westminster were fantastic. I was a new kid halfway through, so I kind of joined the party late, but it gave me a fresh jolt of energy.
Now, while you were still with Westminster in 2007, you were drafted in the second round for the entry draft with the NHL by the Boston Bruins. What was that experience like at such a young age?
I was kind of naive to it all. I was 17 when I got drafted. I went back to high school for my senior year after I was drafted, so I just remember how fun it was to be exposed to the big stage of the NHL entry draft. It was a good experience. I got taken by the Boston Bruins, which I was ecstatic about. I look back on it and say, wow, it's really young to go through something like that, mostly because I didn't understand the significance of it completely.
So after Westminster, you went to Boston College. So that big deal, obviously big powerhouse school. Tell me about that experience.
I started getting college attention my sophomore and junior year, and from some smaller schools, and I was thrilled about that. But at the same time, I was kind of saying in the back of my head, like, I got to keep pushing and get the big schools involved. And eventually BC and BU both showed interest, and that was a huge thing for me. I think in the back of my head, I knew the whole way through that BC was where I wanted to end up. We have a copy of a note that I wrote to Coach York when I was 10, saying I want to play for the Eagles, this and that. And sure enough, 8 years later, I got to go there and play.
Now, while you were with Boston College, you won 2 NCAA championships, once in your sophomore year and the next in your senior year. While you were the team's captain, what was that experience like?
My senior year was kind of a culmination of everything. We had a great group, awesome guys. It was a unique culture there, something that all points back to Coach York and kind of the environment that he creates. There's no better way to end a season than to win and be able to celebrate, to end your college career on a win. For my class and I, it was the best way to go out, and we still talk about that.
So 4 days after winning that championship, your senior year, you got a call from the Bruins and they signed you to a 2-year contract. And you made your debut with the Providence Bruins, and you've been with them since. What has that experience been like after only 4 days after winning your last college championship?
Yeah, that happened fast too. We flew home from Florida. The Frozen Four was in Tampa. We had a parade on the Tuesday after the Saturday championship game. I think I played in Providence that next Friday. So I had a week to kind of digest it and get ready for it. It was quick. I only played 2 games in Providence at the end of that season, but I think that experience was very valuable going into my first training camp the next season.
Since the 2015-2016 season, you've been the team captain for the Providence Bruins. I'm noticing a theme here. What qualities do you think it takes for someone to really emerge as a leader for their team?
I think you need to be a team-first guy. I think the team needs to be put before yourself, which can be done in many different ways. I've seen it with guys that could be offensive producers, and you know, they're asked to handle a different role, and that's what they do. And I think that's a perfect example of being a team-first guy. Being a good teammate and a good citizen, I think that certainly helps, and that's something that, you know, you always have to keep working on because no one's perfect. I think some people are naturally, you know, more vocal, some people are quiet, and I think both are necessary and important. There's a need for all different types of leaders, and I think it's important to be who you are and not change.
This past April, you had the opportunity to play in Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Playoffs with the Boston Bruins. Take me through that experience.
We were in the midst of trying to clinch our playoff berth in Providence, and you know, that's your focus. When you're in Providence, you're working for the P Bruins and trying to help the team. But you always have your eye on the NHL, and that's where you're trying to end up. You know, you watch Game 1 of their series against Ottawa and Game 2 as well, so you try to stay involved that way, but you don't really experience it till you get up there and you go out for warm-ups, and that was the highlight for me, was warm-ups at the Garden. The fans, the Boston fans are incredible, and just to be in the room with, you know, some of the incredible leaders that they have, guys that have won Stanley Cups, Olympic golds, players that you aspire to be. So to learn from them, be around them, I think it made me a better player. I learned a lot. Once you get a taste of it, you want to be back there. So it's definitely the best motivator.